Hello everybody and welcome to Zotefoams' three-stage webinar process, also celebrating 100 years of that unique manufacturing process. Firstly, apologies to those of you who registered for this event a couple of weeks ago. Due to technical difficulties, we had to cancel that at short notice. And unfortunately, that means that Mitch Rock from UFP is unavailable to be with us today. However, we do hope to reschedule that webinar in a couple of weeks' time. So please stand by and we will alert everybody when that's going to happen. And we get a valuable customer perspective from Mitch. So just before we start, a little bit of housekeeping from me. The session will last around 45 minutes today. It will begin with a welcome message from James Bridges, our Director of High Performance Products. And then Dr. Karl Hewson, our Technical Director, Chief Technical Officer, will take us on a guided tour around the UK manufacturing plants. We'll finish up with a Q&A session and just some notes around that. We have 150 registrations today from 27 countries, so it's unlikely that we'll get to everybody's questions, but we'll do our best. And obviously, if we don't answer your question, then your usual Zotefoams contacts will be able to help you. Your cameras and microphones are switched off for the duration, but if you would like to ask a question, please ask it in the text box on your screen. And as I say, we will get through as many as we can. The webinar recording will be available on YouTube shortly. After the event, we'll follow up with a brief email with all the details, the things that we've discussed today. So please do feel free to watch that again at your leisure or share with colleagues or other contacts who you think might find it informative. And finally, at the end of the event, we will send you a short survey. We do welcome your feedback. We're relatively new to webinars. But given the way the world is these days, it's an important channel for us. So please do take a couple of minutes and fill out that questionnaire. So I'm now going to hand over to James Bridges.
Welcome to Zotefoams PLC's Centenary webinar. My name is James Bridges, I'm the HPP Director, and I'm really excited to see so many of you could join us today. So Zotefoams is 100 years old. It's been providing optimal material solutions for the benefit of society throughout its history, and this has really been based around innovation. Innovation around expanding various different materials and allowing our end users to use these materials in disruptive ways to influence their markets. So where did it start? Well, in 1921, Charles Lancaster Marshall founded the company Zote, which would later become Zotefoams PLC. His aim to capitalise on innovation around expanding rubber for various markets, but one of those being pneumatic tyres. He was successful. The company quickly became known as the Expanded Rubber Company, and in 1935 saw a move to the current Croydon headquarters site, London, UK. Interestingly, many of those markets served in 1935 overlap with markets we serve today: automotive, seals and gaskets, and insulation for ice cream, which we still do for T-Fit today. But the company also followed highly innovation-based markets like aviation, trying to find many different materials and expand them to make materials that customers could use in the way that the various markets were innovating around, requiring lightweighting, resilience, purity, which all fitted very much around the process. By the end of World War II, the company produced 1.2 million metres squared of the product Zote for self-sealing fuel tanks. We still sell into fuel tanks in aviation today and also space. One of the more remarkable products to come on, and way ahead of its time, was the product Formvar, which was a vinyl, expanded vinyl. This had remarkable impact strength, and from 1942 for over 10 years became a bestseller. Innovation continued through the 40s and 50s. in looking at new materials to expand, but also new applications where these unique materials could be used, with their very unique properties of being lightweight, resistant, ultra pure. But in 1962, Plaster Zote was born, and Eva Zote soon followed in 1968. The polyolefin foams were introduced, and that killed off really the last of the rubber-based portfolio. After a brief ownership by BP in 1992, a management buyout occurred, and by 1995, Zotefoams plc was listed on the stock exchange. In 1981, the company won the Prince Philip Award, which you can see a picture on this slide. So where are we now? Well, we've continued that innovation. We've introduced new products around our unique technology and process. The HPP portfolio with Zotec F PVDF foam, Zotec N nylon foam, and Zotec T launched this year, the TPE foam. These new foams all offer new properties and benefits to various different markets, but all consistently based around that traditional process, which we'll talk about later on, offering the benefits of lightweighting, insulation, and you get the picture, pretty much the same as 1935. We also have our T-Fit insulation business and our Resource circular packaging business, a recycling barrier material. So we are a very resilient growing business. And for any resilient growing business, we need to stay ahead of demand from our customers. That's why we've invested heavily since 2017 in our Croydon site and our Kentucky site in USA, and we opened our brand new site in Poland this year. And by the end of this year, Leominster site will have its first pilot extrusion line for Resource. We continue to expand and look at capacity with our growing demand. This makes us a truly global company with sites from America through Europe and into China. Our markets may look the same, but many different applications now, which utilize the uniqueness of our materials we offer. These materials often are around giving additional performance to our customers. And a great example of that is our partnership with Nike. A record-breaking partnership, some would say. We also continue to work in aviation and in space and many different new markets where our materials are unique and allow performance to create efficiency and reduce energy usage. But how is this all possible? This is possible because of our unique three-stage process. Karl Hewson will now take you on a tour of the Croydon site, talking you through each stage of the process in some little bit more detail.
Welcome to Zotefoams for a tour of our 100-year-old foam manufacturing process using high-pressure autoclave technology. I'm Karl Hewson, Director of Technology and Development here at Zotefoams plc. The process starts with the silo delivery of polymer granules. The polymer granules are fed from the silo into a hopper on an extruder, where they're mixed with any other additives that we want, such as colour or flame retardants. They're fed into the extruder, where they're heated, melted and mixed before being extruded through a die into a sheet form onto a belt. The extruded sheet passes onto a belt and underneath a hot oven. As it passes through the oven, it's heated to a higher temperature still, where a chemical reaction occurs called cross-linking. At the end of the oven, the sheet comes out and is allowed to cool. Once it re-solidifies, at the end of the extruder, it is trimmed to the correct size and we have a finished cross-linked sheet of polymer, solid polymer. Our finished foam products tend to be 2 meters by 1 meter dimension. Because we have different products with different foam densities, a foam that is going to be 50 kilogram per cubic meter starts off as a slab that's bigger than a foam that's going to be 24 kilogram per cubic meter. So at the extrusion stage, we have to cut the slabs to an appropriate size. Smaller slab, bigger expansion ratio, lower density. During the expansion process, the foam becomes very tacky because it's melted. To stop it sticking and to allow it to slip, we have to use a release agent. Because our customers use adhesives, we cannot use the traditional silicone or fluoropolymer release agents, so we use a talcum-based coating. Each of the slabs is sprayed with a talcum powder that's washed off at the end of the process.
These are the high-pressure autoclaves, the core technology of Zotefoams. The vessels are precision engineered to withstand pressures of nitrogen up to 670 bar, which is 10,000 psi, at temperatures up to 250 degrees C.
So the carriage is loaded into the autoclave, then the operators come here and set the correct program going, which is all PLC controlled. The initial part of the cycle is to purge the vessel of any oxygen by pressurizing with nitrogen and releasing to atmosphere. Once we've removed the oxygen, the whole of the vessel is pressurized with nitrogen gas up to what we call the soak pressure. At the same time, we heat up to what we call the soak temperature. When we've achieved soak conditions, the right temperature and the right pressure, we then hold it there for a long period of time while the gas soaks in from the outside all the way to the middle. This takes a long time, many hours in the autoclave. But once we've achieved equilibrium, we then rapidly depressurize. This is like releasing the cork from a bottle of champagne. The gas that's dissolved in the liquid suddenly comes out of the liquid and forms little gas bubbles. But unlike champagne, we don't release it to atmosphere, we release it partially above atmosphere, so those little bubbles form, but they don't expand. Once we've formed the bubbles, we cool the vessel down while retaining pressure in the vessel. That stops expansion, but refreezes the polymer, so the polymer is now solid. Once it's refrozen, we can release the pressure and no growth occurs. So we end up with little bubbles dispersed within the solid polymer, but it looks essentially the same size as it did when we first put it into the vessel. We can then remove those slabs from the vessel, ready for the next stage. So when the slabs are removed from the high pressure autoclave, they've got pressurized gas in them. We have about 24 hours to use that gas to expand the slab into foam at room temperature. If we freeze it, we have a lot longer. We can actually ship it to North America and expand the slabs in North America. But today we're in Croydon. So within 24 hours, the slabs are loaded into another carriage, a much bigger carriage with a shelf that's 2 meters by 1 meter by about 50 millimeters thickness. It allows the full sheet of foam to expand and grow into it. So the solid slabs are loaded directly into the middle of that carriage. The carriage will hold over 100 sheets at a time. We then have the low pressure autoclave. The low pressure autoclave is a much bigger vessel because it's taking lower pressures. We typically have about 20 bar, 250 psi. At the beginning of the cycle, the doors open. When the doors open, the carriage is dragged inside the hot vessel. The doors then close and the vessel's immediately pressurized to 250 psi again. That pressure is a counter pressure that stops the gas escaping from the slabs. We can then heat up the slab to above the melt point. That softens the slab. This takes about an hour. So the slabs sit there in the vessel for about an hour, heating up until they're melted under this counter pressure that stops the gas escaping. After about the hour, we can release that counter pressure, and the soft polymer is expanded by the expanding gas that's been dissolved in it into a sheet of foam. The door of the autoclave is then opened again, the carriage is dragged out, and the hot foam is left in a siding to cool down. So when the foam comes out of the autoclave, it's hot and molten. Feel how soft it is, ready for thermoforming. Doesn't burn your fingers because it's an excellent thermal insulator. This will sit in the cooling bays with air being drawn across it to cool it down and turn it back into a solid piece of foam. After cooling, the sheets are unloaded from the low pressure autoclave and the talc coating is washed off. The clean sheets are then inspected before being wrapped and packed. Each batch of foam undergoes a series of quality control tests. So our 2000 by 1000 by 50mm thick LD24 sheet was made from a slab of this size, which is about a 3.5 times expansion in each of the length, width and thickness. After wrapping, the pallets are transferred to the warehouse, ready for dispatch.
Good. So I hope you found that interesting and enjoyable. Lots of detail there, and lots of the reasons why Zotefoams materials are different from any others. We've had quite a few questions come in during the video. So let me just start with one for Karl. Karl, are you able to explain the key differences between a Zotefoams material and a more common chemically expanded foam?
Okay, so primarily our foaming agent is nitrogen gas, which is inert and pure. So what we have is polymer, and that's it. The other component in there is air. There are no chemical residues that compromise either the properties or the purity, and that is the core difference. It also allows us, because we're using nitrogen and don't have to incorporate another chemical that decomposes, to have much more flexibility about which polymers we foam and the colors that we achieve. There's no background color, you've just got natural polymer, and we can put much higher loadings of things like flame retardants and conducting agents. So the actual foaming process gives you a broader product range and more flexibility with better performance all round, simply because you don't have to add a chemical for foaming. You're on mute, Rosemary.
while you're on a roll, I've got another one for you. Why do other companies not copy Zotefoams autoclave technology?
We hope. And primarily what's protected Zotefoams for a long time is the capital cost. I mean, it's huge. You just saw those vessels. They're many millions of pounds. And anyone who looks at our annual report and sees the investment that we've recently made in Poland realizes the cost, and that's only part of the process. It's not only that, and it's a very simple process. You've just seen as we're basically dissolving gas into a polymer and using that gas to expand. In principle, the scientific principles behind it are pretty simple, but it's not an off-the-shelf process. You can't just go to somebody and say, can I buy the Zotefoams process, please? There's 100 years of experience here that turns what is a simple principle and scientific principle into a implemented manufacturing process. And that's really what protects us, that upfront capital cost and that 100 years of know-how to be able to implement that into an efficient manufacturing process.
Thank you. One for James, I think next. So talking about our high performance product range and the recent launch of Zotefoams T, can you tell us a little bit more about that and where you anticipate it's going to be used?
Well, yes, we're very excited by Zotefoams T. It kind of fits alongside our existing Zotefoams range and stable, and it offers some unique characteristics, particularly in energy return. It's incredibly resilient, and like all materials we produce, lightweight. And it has a lot of other characteristics which you can kind of find on the webpage. Where do we see it being used? Where we see sportswear and automotive, as you've probably seen our Hollywood kind of branding and launch. But that's where initial focus has been. But this is what's so unique about, and if you look at our history, is that our customers and our channel partners find uses for these materials. And it does have different properties than we'd expect. Well, not we'd expect. There are other product range. So we're very excited to see really what our customers can do with it and how we can support that with the grade.
Thank you. Right, big question for Karl. What does sustainability mean to Zotefoams? That big word that we're all talking about at the moment.
I've had this one a couple of times at conferences. So I normally talk about two sides to this. There's business sustainability, what makes Zotefoams 100 years old and its long-term success. And we think that's good long-term partnerships. So the majority of people on this call, no doubt, on this webinar, will be long-term partners. We're not just somebody you buy from once. We're a long-term partner. We've continually evolved, offering value-adding products for people that have got multitude of uses. People build businesses around our product range. So from a business sustainability perspective, that's what we do, and we will continue to carry on evolving those products that people want. Then you've got the environmental side of sustainability. So what do we mean? What does Zotefoams think sustainability is? We produce products, and there's a lot of talk about things like recyclability. I'm sure someone's bound to ask about that. There's a lot of talk about recyclability, but what Zotefoams has pinned itself on is the fact that we've got this process that gives us better performance at lower weight and lower density. And what that actually means is we're using less material, less resources, which is far more sustainable. And we make a product that everybody knows is more durable. If you want a durable product that lasts a long time, you buy Plastazote, the cross-link polyethylene foam. And reuse and long-term use is far more sustainable than recycle. So we're producing a product that lasts our customers a lot longer and is reused and uses less resource to make it in the first place. We're committed to making that lower density. We're committed to reducing our carbon footprint by making sure we make it in the most efficient way. But we recognize that customers have a choice. So our approach to sustainability is really transparency. And combined with our customers, we work to deliver the best solution, and which is often low weight. And good example would be in aviation, where we just take weight out of the part. which saves a huge amount of energy, far more sustainable for aviation to use a product that's lighter weight, burns less fuel over the whole lifetime. So longevity, lower weight, it just makes us a far more sustainable product.
Thank you. Sorry, just lost my the bottom of my screen there for a second. Right, interesting one for James now. Zotefoams serves many markets. Do you see growth in components supplied using foam, and why?
Well, a very easy question to say yes to. We can see, we have amazing customers from space to industrial usage, making components and making parts, much like what Karl just said, in a relationship with Zotefoams, and really getting the benefit of our very lightweight material and the other ultra pure and other bits we've already discussed. But when we work with our customers, they can do some crazily exciting things about, energy saving for aviation, for lightweighting, making parts which are more comfortable, making insulation for loss of heat, or making processes more consistent, to packaging, making sure that we don't get any spoils. There's so many applications for this material that you can see a larger and larger market for the components being made. For certain, and it's a very exciting place to be when we go out to see customers and working with customers. And we've got a good track record of working with very large customers and very small, to coming up with fantastic solutions to meet the kind of new world problems, which is sustainability and the kind of green issues are definitely one of those. So yes, a very simple answer.
Okay. And sustainability does seem to be the theme of the moment. So Karl, you're quite right. We've had the question about recycling Zotefoams products. So back to you, please.
Can it be recycled? Okay. Yes is the answer. So our product is widely recycled. Some would call it downcycling, where it's used in things like turf underlay. We cannot, that's a great market, great added value, and they cannot get enough of our product. So it's used both the post-industrial waste and end of life. Can it be recycled back into itself? Yes. Okay. There's this myth that cross-linked foams cannot be recycled, and with ours, it's quite lightly cross-linked. It gives it all the benefits. The amount of cross-link we put in gives it all the benefits of enhanced strength and a bigger processing window for our customers to be able to thermoform it. But it doesn't prevent it from being remelt processed, and we can actually take the skins, remelt process them, and turn them back into foam. There's some issues around contamination. That's the major issue, not the cross-linking. It's around contamination, because our process with its homogeneous nucleation is very sensitive to contaminants. If we take the scrap that we have, we can successfully foam it. Taking other people's scrap has proved more problematic, but we're carrying on working on that. So yes, it can be recycled, will be recycled in the future, and is currently downcycled very widely.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to give you one more, and then I'm going to give you a break, Karl. Sorry. Does Zotefoams have plans to produce foams based on recycled or bio-based polymers? And I'm guessing this is something that is in tune with messages about plastic, other materials.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I partly covered that, haven't I? With the so we've already looked at recycled. It's an active program. We can make product made from recycled content. What I would say is we're looking at post-consumer waste recycling. In terms of bio-based polymers, there are polyethylenes made from bio sources available. We could foam them. As I said earlier on, our process is immensely flexible. We can take almost any polymer and foam it. So switching to a bio-based polyethylene is not a problem. It's just a case of, do people want it? And everyone wants it, but there's a price premium with it, unfortunately, from the suppliers of the polyethylene. but it's there. If anyone wants it, please just ask and talk to our sales guys, and they'll put that demand on us, and it's not a difficult thing to develop. In terms of other biopolymers, we already make foams with them. So there are bio content in polyamides, there are bio content in TPEs, readily available. We already foam them. Okay, so they're there.
Okay. Thank you. Right, so I said I would give you a break. I'm going to come back to James. We have quite a few people from Asia on the call today, and there's a question about, we have a plant in Poland now, so do we have any plans for expanding our footprint in Asia?
I think I said in the presentation, one of the struggles we have as a business is trying to stay ahead of our customers' demand, which is a struggle. We've invested very, very heavily for the size company we are in getting Croydon capacity up, Kentucky, our facility in the USA, up to scratch. We opened Poland this year, and we continue to always look at staying ahead of that curve. So, you know, Asia is definitely under discussion. We do have a small T-fit plant in Shanghai, and we will always look to ensure that we can meet the demands of our customers in the longer term. We're constantly looking at capacity, and that's something we do. So no promises, but it's certainly something which is discussed. But we definitely do have a good channel in Asia. We supply into Asia quite heavily already. The whole range of our products, actually. So it's not inhibiting us to supply at the moment, I'm hasten to add. But yes, we're always looking to see what the trends are, not just in the near future, kind of the 5-year cycle, 10-year cycle as well. And that will be constantly reviewed.
Okay, thank you. Another question for Karl. Obviously in the video we saw blocks of foam being produced. I have a question here about whether we have ever tried to foam directly shaped products, so individual finished pieces.
Yeah, we have a pattern on it. It's possible. Okay, if that person wants, we call it a near net shape. So when you foam something, we can take a shape. If you ever go around Zotefoams, what you will see are some sheets that have had a dumbbell specimen, a test specimen cut out, and the foam sheet that it's been cut out is then foamed, and we use that for our test piece. And the dumbbell shape is perfectly shaped inside the foam. I can take that dumbbell piece, or I can take any shape, and we've taken some very complex shapes, and form it, and it comes out as a bigger version, a foamed version of what we started out with. Okay, but you end up with a skin on it, so you lose a little bit of definition, right? You can also, it's a bit more difficult to do it, but you can also foam that into a tool. Okay, so there are a big deal of flexibility. You can do it, but then there's the economic side of it. You saw the autoclaves, you saw my presentation on that, where I walked you around and I said for many hours it's going to sit in a high pressure autoclave. So the high pressure autoclaves, where it's sitting for 5 to 10 hours maybe, you've got to fill them full. So if you've got these tiny little pieces in there, they're not as full as they could be with an efficiently packed large sheet. So for things like polyethylene, it's perhaps the economics aren't as good. For things like PVDF, Zotec F, Zotec T, the economics are pretty good. You can form it into a 3D shape. What I would encourage that person, if they've got an idea about it, just to speak to the salespeople and feed it back into us. We've already done it, and like I say, we've got a patent on it.
Okay. So we've talked about some new products. Some kind of more general questions on that. Karl, you may want to start with this. What new materials can we expect from Zotefoams, and does this mean you will phase out older azote grades?
Definitely not. We will iterate our ranges across, iterate all of our ranges, which includes the azote range. And if you look at some of the recent developments, Zotec F as extra rigid grade has been produced. a rigid grade used for aviation. I'm sure James will can collaborate on that if people are interested. Zotec T, which is a TPE foam being used and promoted. We expect that to go into the automotive industry, where flexibility with high temperatures, a real asset, as well as in the Azote range. We've recently launched the Adapt range, Azote Adapt range. We're continually developing, and we see continually in reinvestment in our pipeline, which has kept us going for 100 years, and hopefully will keep us going for another 100 years.
Thanks, Karl. And then, another one, probably allied to the very first question about the differences between Zotefoams materials and others. How does Zotefoams material create value for end users?
I mean, the unique process gives us inherently lightweight, low VOC, high purity, low smell, and there's a lot of big brands. You talk about end users. There's a lot of big brands that really do value that and choose our material and then pull it through the supply chains. So people really do value it, that purity and lightweight. The fact that you've got a product that uses less material, is inherently thermal insulating, all of those attributes given to us by that core unique manufacturing process. That's what adds value. And the fact that we can, it's not just about our materials, it's about the company and the process. The fact that Zotefoams has got that process and can foam many other polymers, so people are well aware of the relationship we have in footwear, and the fact that we are able to foam TPEs and specialty polymers that really do give record-breaking foams.
Thank you. One for James next, which is very pertinent given that we're meeting virtually. A couple of questions around the pandemic. How has Zotefoams been affected by COVID? And allied to that, whether we have any issues with the supply of raw material, or do we expect any?
Two questions. COVID's obviously been a testing time for the markets. The force majeure has had an effect. We've tried to manage that and try and limit the effect to our customers. And I think we've done a very good job of that, and that's been demonstrated with the feedback we've got. And that's particularly on our Azote range has probably been the kind of heaviest affected. But your guess is as good as mine where that's going. But it seems like it could be probably a short-term to medium-term thing. So we don't expect any lingering consequences on that. And certainly we're not stopping supply. It just means the costs of those materials have considerably gone up. And we've tried to minimise the effect on our end customers. And also maintain supply by good management of our logistics stream. And when we can maintain to do that, and we're in constant communication with our customers to ensure they know the situation, and we're, as I say, it's in our own interest to really minimise the effect of our customer base. COVID as a whole, well, here, have a read of our Zotefoams annual report. It has a lot about it there. I think the word resilient comes to mind, a bit like our foam. We've been flexible. Our workforce internally has done an amazing job coming into work, manning the plant, making sure we've kept up with customer demand. We've had people working remotely very successfully. We've all got used to this kind of virtual world. And we've given very good results during that time. We've also helped in PPE demand in the early stages, which is a very good story. And we've maintained a very strong business and tried to grow even in markets which are in difficult situations, such as aviation. So, COVID has affected us. It continues to affect us. We see logistics, more and more issues around getting material around the world, but we've managed that very successfully, and we continue to monitor all these situations. It helps having the capacity planning we've done to meet our customers' demand globally. So yeah, it's been a difficult time, and some markets have been ravaged, and other markets are increasing. So it's the agility of the company as a whole, and the fact we invest so heavily in development, and in Karl and his team, iterative approaches to development, but also fully fledged pipelines of new products, which he doesn't talk enough about, puts us in a very strong position to kind of weather these difficult times and actually come out very strong. So, and that's also thankful to our partners and our customers.
Thank you. I'm aware that we've only got a couple of minutes left, so if there are any more questions, please do feed them in. One has come in, which I'm going to back to James, but I suspect might come back to me. We're talking today about the centenary of the process, and there's a question about whether Zotefoams is doing anything else to mark the centenary year.
Well, it's a very important time for us in that it does two things. It makes you look back and recognise the achievement of being around for 100 years. And secondly, we should also use it about what have we done well and why have we been around 100 years, and look forward. I think we've got good evidence. We always look forward in Zotefoams. So we really want to make sure all our stakeholders kind of realise that we're 100 years old, see the strength and what we've done and the great partnerships we've had. We want to celebrate with our employees and our customers, kind of reaching this milestone. To the previous question, COVID does make it a slightly more complex beast than normal, maybe. So we've got some plans to celebrate it more. I'm going to push this to you, Rosemary, because that's the right thing to do. But we've got things to do with customers. We're not just trying to do as an internal element. We will do that and do that. But we also want to recognise the achievements of Karl and his predecessors and the technology team in producing great products and how they've been used. So you can tell everyone more about the award scheme, which we're very excited about.
Yeah. So yes, COVID has made this very difficult, unpredictable, but certainly 100 years is something worth marking. So I'm very proud today to be able to tell you that we are launching the Zotefoams Centenary Awards. We'll send you more information after the webinar, but essentially this is to honour and recognise the contribution of Zotefoams materials, our customers and their customers. We have a number of different categories, so longest running application, and if we look at Plasterzote, Plasterzote will be 60 years old next year, so yeah, and still going strong. So a number of different categories, very easy to enter, no cost to enter, and we just hope that you will join us in showcasing all the wonderful things that can be achieved with Zotefoams materials. That is the one caveat. It's not foam in general, it's applications fulfilled with Zotefoams materials. So process for that, entries are open. There is a special website, which we'll share the link very shortly. Closing date mid-September. We'll judge them at the end of September. We have a panel of judges, including Zotefoams experts and some external judges as well, who are very well known in the industry. Karl's smiling. I'm referring to him as one of the experts. And then hopefully later this year, we can all finally get together at trade shows. So our plan at the moment is that we'll announce the winners in October at an online event, and then all being well, subject to Foam Expo Europe going ahead in November as planned, all the entries will be showcased on the Zotefoams stand, just to demonstrate the scope of what these materials can do. So please do support it. I think it's a great opportunity for our customers to showcase their skills as well. Okay, so we are now 1 minute over time. So I am going to suggest that we wrap up now. Thank you all very much for your time, and we hope that you will take part in the awards. Look out for further webinars that are coming your way later this year, covering different aspects of the business. And as I said at the beginning, if your question wasn't answered, please get in touch with your regular Zotefoams contact, and they will feed it through to the team. So I think it just remains for me to say, my notes did say good morning, but actually I should say good morning to our friends in America, good afternoon to our friends in Europe, and good evening to our friends in Asia. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you
Very much.